All right, Gorgeous George and Goes delivering another MMA superstar for the Junkie Nation. It's Killer Cub Swanson, longtime WEC and UFC featherweight standout. Check it out, Cub. You got like almost 15 wins between both organizations, 8 bonuses. You're an OG, dog.
Well, I appreciate it. I think I have like 12 or 13 bonuses, honestly.
Really? Does that include the little discretionary bonuses that we're not supposed to know about, or?
No, with WEC and UFC combined. And then I always get mad because my second fight against Micah Miller in the WEC, I got fight of the night, and for whatever reason, it's not on my Wikipedia, and I feel like that's what they go off of. So I won fight of the night in that one, so they just always forget to mention that one.
Remind me, how much were the WEC bonuses back in the day?
10 grand.
That's nice. That's nice. At that time, the WEC was considered a regional promotion, and I know a lot of promoters don't like to hear that, especially the ones that say, "Hey, we travel. We're not constricted to a region." But the WEC, I remember, was having to do with NorCal, Central Cali over at Tachi Palace, and then eventually Las Vegas. So they were more based, like in the western part of the United States. But still, I don't think I've heard of too many regional promotions that gave away 10,000. This was more in the Zoof era, though, right?
Yeah. So I signed on like right when they were making the switch, and that kind of delayed my first fight. And then I was supposed to be on a card right before the one I debuted on. And then they ended up pushing me back. And so me and Dominic Cruz made our debut on the same card, and Uriah had fought one before. So, yeah, that's how long we've been in it.
Yeah. The WEC guys are still charging, man. It seems like you can't go more than a card without still seeing some WEC guys. You mentioned Dominic Cruz. You mentioned Uriah Faber. Now, for Faber, we have to go back a little bit, but Joseph Benavidez about a couple months ago, Rafael Assunção. You know what I mean? There's a lot of you. It's a cool fraternity.
Yeah, I've always loved the WC. It's where I feel like. So for me, I never had an amateur career. That wasn't really a thing when I was around in the California circuit. So turning pro right away, I don't think I was as polished. And so my regional circuit fights were like my amateur career. And then the WC was like the beginning of my pro career. And then when we came over to the UFC, I felt like I had a running start to shine. Like I was already used to the interviews and the process of everything. And it was just a bigger stage. So I'm pretty happy how that turned out.
Another reason the WEC's come up lately is because the 25-foot cage promotes more action. I know a lot of people like to say, no, there's action. No, I'm sorry, it does. There's statistics that have been done. The smaller cage just produces more knockouts, more action. And there's been good studies into it. But that's exactly what the WEC used, Man, those cards never sucked, And so I wanted to ask you, you've now fought in both, in the WEC, in the UFC, smaller cage, bigger cage. Can you talk about how it affected your game? Or are you one of those on the other side that, sorry, it doesn't affect me?
Yeah, they never would tell us because, like, even in the UFC, they use smaller cage sometimes on some of the fight nights. And that was something some people asked, but they would just never tell us. So sometimes you just show up and you're like, oh, man, this cage is smaller. But I think it really favored, at the time, it really favored the wrestler. So that was hard when you had some really good wrestlers that just could dominate that part of the game. For the strikers that wanted to move around and use, all the space that we had, that was better to be in the UFC's big cage. But I think now everyone's so good at stand-up that people are just mixing it up and it doesn't really matter as much. I don't think you're getting, as many Damian Mayas and Ben Askrens and guys that that's all they want to do is they want to get you to the ground they want to have the advantage. So I'm not as worried about the smaller cages I used to be.
Mm-hmm. All right. Why don't you update us a little bit? We can obviously tell you've been on an exercise bike for the duration of this interview, and who knows how long before that. You suffered a knee injury at the Quintet Grappling. I guess it was a tournament because it was 4 teams, and that was in December. So this would be, if I'm not mistaken, you're probably about in a 6-month recovery or so. I don't know how far out you did the surgery, but I think you did it rather quickly. What's the update there?
Yeah, so I had surgery a week before Christmas, so I'm over 5 months now. I'm doing pretty good. I still can't run. There's some certain things I can't do, but I've been boxing. I do agility stuff. I can't land on it very hard, and wrestling and grappling have been some things I'm just starting to do, and I'm only doing it with smaller guys to make sure that any kind of fall or a movement I didn't expect isn't going to be as impactful since they're a little smaller. So I'm just easing my way into it. But man, through this whole quarantine, through everything, I've been doing physical therapy. I have to do physical therapy with a mask on, which sucks. I feel like I'm waterboarding myself. Because the first time I was using the paper masks, the medical ones, and I'd start sweating right away, and then I'd be like struggling to breathe for 2 hours. So, I mean, I'm doing 2 hours every time I go. So this whole thing has just been a mental battle for me. I'm used to having injuries, but I've never had to deal with an injury that took this long.
Yeah, it was the hands back in the day, but that's kind of way back in the rearview mirror. Now it's this knee. I guess my next question would be, are we going to see you in 2020?
Yes, sir. I've been trying to promote the Killer Cub 2020 because that's been it for me. This is the whole year it's going to take me to come back just to fight one time. So I wanted, my fans to kind of gather around me. We'll be having shirts through Virus coming out soon. Killer Cub 2020. It's an election year, it's going to be fun. But yeah, I'll be able to fight one time this year. And so I'm taking the opportunity to just get better. That's my goal, is to be better than I've ever been. I'm a little older now, got a lot of experience. These younger kids coming up are talented, So it's exciting. I want to get back in there, and I want to be better than I've ever been.
You've had to recover before from injuries, maybe not this long, but can you talk about the difference here in the sense that MMA kind of shut down for a little bit? On top of that, we had the coronavirus going on. We still do. The protests that are going on. You've had a lot of downtime in times where a lot of us as human beings are consuming a lot of stuff that we see on television that can sometimes affect our moods. And I saw something that you had tweeted that about some of the protests and even experiences that you've dealt with as a child. Can you talk a little bit about the recovery process amongst everything that's going on? And can you maybe share and elaborate a little bit about some of your own personal experiences?
Yeah, so obviously it's been stressful, but everybody's stressed, and it's something me and my wife talk about often. Is when we get stressed out, I always have to say, "Hey, man, it's stressful. We got 3 kids, and it's tough. I'm injured. I'm not working, but we still have it a lot better than a lot of people, and so I can't use this as an excuse. I feel very fortunate." And the fact that I'm injured and then all this take place, there wasn't a lot of fights going on. I was like, man, I'm trying to look for the silver lining and everything. So I think I kind of took it as a good time to just really refocus my energy, try to be better, and take advantage of how much time I have with my kids, because everyone tells me it goes by so fast. So I was like, okay, well, I'm going to take this opportunity to soak up all this time with my kids and just get as strong as possible and try not to stress out about all these things that's going on in the world.
You wear a lot of hats, as you mentioned. Do you wear them all at the same time? In other words, a lot of people don't know this, but you're also a gym owner. So you have to worry about business, the things that you have to do to reopen. Can you do that and wear the fighter hat at the same time and wear the dad hat and the investment hat? Are they all at the same time, or do you have to handle them individually?
They're at the same time. I I know when I'm overwhelmed to distribute priorities, say, hey, I tell my wife, I need you to handle this for me. I'm a little overwhelmed. Or I tell my manager, hey, you make the decisions on the gyms and stuff right now. My financial advisor will call me and talk to me about stocks and stuff. And I'm like, hey, call me after practice. So I'm always going to be trying to do all that stuff. But if it becomes too overwhelming or it's distracting, then I know to push it off onto people I trust. And I think that's part about, like, one thing that you got to learn about. To be successful, you got to know your strengths and weaknesses and know to build a team that has strengths where you're weak. So all the people I have around me, I know I trust them to do certain things, and I'll be able to say, hey, handle this for me. I just really need to focus right now. And in times like this, when I don't have a fight coming up, I'm doing it all. I'm averaging like 3 to 4 poop diapers a day, 20 miles on my bike, doing everything I can. So I mean, I'm grinding, and I'm trying to make the best of it.
Every time we introduce you, I feel like there's a different accolade that we add to your resume. And I was thinking about this. You want to come back, you want to fight in 2020. And I know you're one of those guys that feeds off of the energy of the crowd. Things will be a little different now. But something like Fight Island, is that just like another badge that would be kind of cool to put on the resume? Or when you come back, are you hoping there's going to be crowds and all that stuff back again?
I'd like to fight without a crowd and see what it's like. And I feel like I kind of have to mentally prepare that's an option. Trying to prepare mentally for a fight, you have to think of all these different scenarios, and there's a strong possibility I'll be fighting in front of no crowd. So, when the weather changes again, if the COVID picks back up, we're for sure not going to have a crowd. So I'm excited to try that out. But if there is a crowd, then, I'm good with that too. But I mean, the island, it is a notch on a belt. It's like, man, I fought on the island in 2020 during the craziness. That would be fun. It would be a fun story.
How you doing on the bike? You're kind of breathing a little hard. How's that coming along right now? Or do we need to switch venue? Because I got more questions.
No, let's bring it. This is easy work for me. This is 45-minute, just light work.
Oh, okay.
Just keep a pace. So,
all right,
we're good.
So let me ask you something. You tweeted calf kicks are greater than thigh kicks. Explain in terms of, you probably mean they're just more devastating. And then what do you think is going to be the counter? I guess it's still obviously checking. I mean, checking the thigh kick can you teach us a little bit, checking the calf kick versus checking the thigh kick? Or is the avoidance better, or maybe even recognizing and being able to step back? Like, what are some of the counters that you guys are looking at? Because this thing is everywhere, and it's, one of the first fights of the night, Perez, he beat a good fighter. Jussier Formiga is a good fighter, man, and he beat him with those kicks. So tell me a little bit about this.
Well, I think I started implementing it because how I always try to recreate when I'm down. And so when I broke my jaw, I had that surgery, and I was trying to make my UFC debut against Lamas. That's when it just kind of, a light went off. And I'm not sure if Ben Henderson was doing it first. I think so, but I don't recall seeing him and going, okay, I want to do that. I just remember it clicking, like, it makes way more sense. The lower you go down the leg, the closer it is to you. So it's harder for the person to counter you. You really can't check the kick because you have to stay on your toe and pivot out. it's pretty difficult. I think you're better off lifting your leg and letting them kick under you. And then third, you can disguise it by level changing, like Cody Garbrandt did. Level change. I do that all the time. I level change, and people drop their weight because they're expecting you to shoot, and then they can't lift their leg up. So it's almost like impossible to block, and it does way more damage. And I'm not running the risk of hitting your knee, which is the worst. Hitting somebody's knee is just, you might break your foot. You're going to sprain your ankle. So I'm all about landing shots that aren't going to hurt me.
And then you saw the Perez Formiga fight, right?
Uh-huh.
That last one, it almost looked like he almost hit him with like the tip of his toes. And I think DC or one of the guys was trying to explain how that could be this, or it didn't make sense to me. I'm thinking obviously shin or maybe instep before toes. But do you think the damage on Formiga was so bad, maybe it was even a break, that just a little graze was that devastating that it ended the fight?
I mean, yeah, it could have broken his leg. So you have two bones that go down your shin, right? The main one, it's the fibula and tibula, I believe. There's the main one, and then the one that kind of bows out, and that like your ACL controls your side-to-side movement. So you can walk with a broken leg if the smaller one's broken, and you could walk and you're okay, but you're not 100%, and you'll know it. So a lot of people don't realize that they'll have a broken leg, and I don't think it's that hard to break that bone. So these calf kicks can really break somebody's the smaller bone, and even if it's a microfracture, it's going to be extremely painful.
Mm-hmm. Do you like to kick the inside of the calf, or is it outside more for Killer Cub?
The inside's a little harder to land, and you're more likely to go shin to shin. So I would have to, if we're both orthodox, I would have to kind of circle in towards his power hand and then explode out and land a kick. So, I mean, it depends how the person's footwork is. But usually, if they're like a boxing style and they have their lead leg out far, it's really easy to calf kick.
Okay. Now, let's switch topics a little bit. I saw you a little active this past weekend. I'd say like the last 2 weeks, aside from the return of, fights in the UFC, Jacksonville first, now the Apex Center, another prominent story has just been fighters who are kind of, brawling, I guess, per se, with the UFC over fighter pay. And, I saw you chime in a little bit on Twitter. What would you like to say that you can't really say on Twitter because you're restricted to 140 characters or 180 or whatever it is? But yeah, you want to make sure that, you get your message across either in support for fighters or whatever it is you want on behalf of yourself, maybe.
I saw Masvidal speaking up. And then earlier in the week or the week before, I saw John and Connor sparring about who's the GOAT. And it just kind of like irritated me because that's a title that someone else gives. And I thought to myself, why not spend that energy trying to make the sport better for all the fighters in the future? And then I saw Masvidal speak up against the fighter pay, that he'd like to get paid more, which, everybody would. So all I really want to say on that is that, in other professional sports, there's a big split, 50-50 roughly, depending on the sport and everything. And obviously they work their way up to that. So I think if the UFC's profiting this much, I think, we come to terms on like a 25%, 30% and work our way up. And I think that's beyond reasonable. So, we at the same time, it becomes difficult because the UFC does really generous things. They paid for my surgery. They took care of everything. They made sure I went to a great doctor. So I'm not going to bash them. They've been amazing to me. But just if I'm going to think about longevity, when I retire, I want to make sure that I have something, you know, and I've been fortunate enough to have good people around me that have made smart investments, and I'll be okay, you know, but I'm not a millionaire, you know, so I think there's a lot of room for growth, and I'd like to see that happen.
When we talk about that split, and I'm getting towards another thing you mentioned, which was a pension/retirement on another tweet. But when we do get to the split, and a lot of people are just focusing on, 18%, 20%, 25, 30, like you just said. But are there other like intangible benefits that you would like what you mentioned, pension, retirement, or other things that maybe you've discussed in a gym with some of your teammates or you thought of yourself? What other things do you think you could do? Like if maybe this association or a band of fighters starts something and they turn to a veteran like yourself?
I wouldn't know what to do. You know, I've always said this. I thought Brian Stan was like the perfect leader to represent the fighters. He was just a very like moral person, you know, like he would just stop and say, "Hey guys, that's not right," and you just think about it and go, "Damn, he is right." Like, man, I think it's the military, but yeah, I think the fighters just need a group of people that represents them and is able to negotiate on everyone's behalf and just make sure that we're set up for long term. That's all.
Let's switch the topic a little bit with what's going on here. Aside from coronavirus, we've had these protests, stemming from the incident, the murder of George Floyd, and that's what I'm calling it. Obviously, there's still a judicial process, but that's what it looked like to me. And you also chimed in that this was, well, I don't know if personal to you, but you've experienced this. You've had your problems with cops. And
yes, I mean,
so it's not restricted to the African American community. Can you talk a little bit about those times that it affected you?
Yeah. So, my family's crazy. We have Native American, Mexican, Swedish, Chinese, Black. We have a very broad diversity in our family. So I'm I get different perspectives, and I think the police have a hard job. I've considered it, maybe after fighting before, but it's not something I think I want to do. But I think they deserve a lot of respect. But that being said, we should be holding them to the highest standard, and that's the problem that we're facing. It's not Kaepernick kneeling or anyone else kneeling or protesting. It's the fact that somebody's doing something so wrong and not being held accountable again and again. That creates a problem. I mean, we're seeing it with the police. We're seeing it with the media. The media right now is just, in general, just trash, because there was a thing back in the day called integrity. And if you cross that line, you would be, your peers would let you know, I could even say that as fighters. There's a line that's being crossed sometimes that we need to check each other. And I've been very open when it comes to that with the fighters, with calling Colby out on it. Henry, whenever someone's crossing the line, they need to be nipped in the butt, whether it's media, the police, anybody. That's just my take on it. And I think the fact that no one's getting held accountable is creating chaos. And it's that simple to me.
Can you explain a little bit more what you mean about media, and is this regarding the protests or sometimes even in MMA, the frustrations you have?
Well, media in general has just been crazy. It's turned into bait clicks, and even why I don't do a lot of interviews. And you guys know this about me. We're having a good interview right now. We're talking, we're catching up. But if I go on the internet tomorrow and I see the headline is Cub Swanson blasts the UFC about fighter pay, I'm going to be pissed because it's not what I wanted to talk about. You brought it up. I gave a very brief opinion on it, and that shouldn't be the headline, right? So if that happens to be the headline, then I'm like, man, I feel a little bit like that wasn't cool, you know? And so I think the media is doing that everywhere. Bait clicking. There's articles I see where I see a headline and I'm like, wow, that really happened. And I read it and it literally is the opposite. And the way they worded it in the title was completely misleading. And people don't have the time to read. They don't have the energy or desire to read the whole interview. People are just reading headlines and then talking, like saying it to their friend. And that, like I said, there used to be integrity where if you did something like that, people would call you out on it and say, hey, why would you write that? That's completely misleading. But we're in an era where, hey, well, it got a lot of views. And that's the most important thing. That's shallow. That's terrible. I don't want any part of that.
Gotcha. Okay. You're still good on time? Or are them legs killing? Yeah. Okay. Just to be clear on 2020. So 2020 is obviously a long time. There's still 7 months left. When do you think, give me like, if you look at the calendar, what month did you circle? Are we talking like December, or could you make it in September or October, or what's your timeline?
So I've said it since day one, November. November is my like go-to, you know? It could be sooner, it could be later. I don't know, because I'm just starting to get to that point where I can train like for real and really, I don't ever know how I'm going to be until I start, right? So once I start doing the hard work and I see how my body's adjusting and how much I got to pull back, that could determine when, you know, if the time changes. But I feel like November is a safe time. It's 11 months post-surgery. I feel like I should be good. I work hard and I think that's very obtainable. Could be sooner, could be later, but it should be the end of this year, the last quarter of this year.
Just two more questions, and then we'll go into phase 3 of. Just kidding. Just two more questions. What's your strategy? In other words, you know, you're now 36. I think you'll be 37 by then, if I'm not mistaken. I think you're a November baby, right, or something like that. Yeah. Okay. And do you want to just say, look, give me a big name at the top, even if I mean, I don't know, like what do you want? Like, is that maybe the best thing right now? Is just, you know, like when they say you're new in a school or new in a yard or whatever, you look for the toughest out and you just go, you want some, kind of like to send a statement. So would you target somebody that's maybe saying nobody wants to fight me, I'm the man, you know, and you go, I'll fight you, just because obviously your stock can take a huge leap if you win.
I mean, there's tons of names I want. There's always people that I see, you know, get a big win and everyone's jumping on the hype train. And I'm like, oh, I feel like I destroy that guy, you know? So I'm always wanting to, you know, challenge myself. But I don't like picking fights, because the couple times that they said, who do you want to fight? And I picked somebody, I ended up not doing great. So I've done pretty well when they said, hey, they always come at me with, hey, this guy is a big deal, we want you to fight him. Okay. And that's always done well for me. So I like that strategy.
We talked about the wins, the bonuses, all the fights you've had, you know, Poirier, Oliveira, Stevens. There's some good names, man, that you have on your resume. What's your proudest moment in your whole, well, you know, that might be a tough question. If you want to give me a couple, that's fine. But what do you look back on, whether it was like that fight, that KO, or just the way you conducted yourself? Is there anything that you can start to look back and go, man, you know, like, you know, a lot of people don't talk about this, but I really am proud of this moment?
It's honestly when I've had to dig deep, you know, all the times when I fought George Roop. I had this little moment in my hotel room the morning of the fight, and I go, hey, if you don't win this fight, this might be it for you. You lose 2 in a row, and you don't know what's going to happen. So I always look in the mirror and just, pretty much yell at myself, tell myself to man up and do what you got to do, and don't let fear break you, So there's that moment. Obviously, the Doo Ho Choi fight I've talked about many times, being such an amazing night because I found out I was going to be a dad. I had fight of the year. It was the biggest crowd I ever fought in front of. It was just so, like, the night was just so wild and magical. When I fought in the WEC and I had a broken hand and I fought anyways, I broke it the week before. I had to really see what I was made of mentally. And I went out there and won the fight and broke my other hand. And so it was like little things like that. And just how I bounced back. I feel like the older I've gotten, the less I've really cared as much about my record. Like, people ask me, what's your record? And I'm like, I don't really remember. And it's just about, like, the journey, man. Like, if you listen, this sport teaches you so much. It humbles you. It builds you up. It pushes you. It makes you, have to really be understanding, like lately with having 3 kids and trying to do the same thing. I've been doing this for, 14 years without kids. And all I would do is train. I didn't do anything else but train and focus on being better. Now I have 3 kids that are, I'm trying to mold, and a wife to keep happy and a house to keep clean. And I have all these things that I've accepted into my life as something I want to take on at the same time. And so fighting is something I'm passionate about. I love to do. But I purposely put other things on my back to just be better, because I've always looked at the champions and go, man, they do more media than anybody. They're always asked to do more. I should do more. And so sometimes it's hard, but I always put things on my back and go, I'm going to take this load for a while. And if I had to ask for help, I'll ask for help. But right now I got this.
Man, that was so cool to listen to, Cub. Folks, for those of you that don't know, we actually knew before we started with MMA Junkie Radio and Tag Radio. And so he was just a young fella, probably 22-ish, around 2006. And living in an apartment in Tustin. And I mean, we remember the Jackson days, or up with Stevenson in Victorville, or in Palm Springs. And now you're, I believe, in Yorba Linda or Anaheim. You're, the other gym you guys got. And now I had a husband, WEC fighter, UFC fighter, all these bonuses. Man, what an awesome journey. And then to hear you just talk like this, Cub, is really, really cool, just seeing you. I mean, of course you were a man at that point. We're all, I guess, men when we cross 18 years of age, but just completely different. Like Go said, the businesses that you have, the investments you were talking about earlier. We're really, really proud of you, my man. And all doing it, keeping it classy. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I try, and, I'm no saint. And there's times when naturally I have a little bit of like I said, with the whole Kron fight, man, I really have nothing but respect for him and his family. But I've talked about that situation of how I don't even think he ever knew that it affected me so much. But I held a grudge for 15 years, and that's not very, that's not the kind of person I want to be. And so I fight with things like that. I want to be better. So, I have my downfalls, but in general, you could ask, you guys, you could ask Sean Shelby. I used to say I was mean and scary to be around, but that was never really me. That was me being insecure and, trying to be a man, but not really knowing what a man is until you get put in the situation and you learn, get beat up a couple times and you get back up and you go, okay, I'm starting to learn now. So that's the best thing about this sport, is this sport made me into who I am. And I'm very appreciative of that. And I want to see it continue to happen for other people. And I'm not a big fan of the, let's talk a lot of trash. we could talk between us, but anytime you talk about my family, my wife, my kids, talk about things outside of fighting, like, I don't like that. I don't think it's cool. I don't think it's a show. And so I'd like to see less of that and just more to, we fight our butts off. And at the end of the day, if you're still standing, I got to give you a hug and respect. And even if not, even if I finished you, I still respect you, So, and even if you kick my ass, I may be not, maybe give me 10 minutes, then we're cool.
Fair enough, man. I love it. All right, cool. Never heard that perspective. All right, you got me, but let me chill a little bit. Then I'll go fucking shake your hand and go to your after party.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
Let me pout for 1 minute. Let me pout and pour me for 1 second, and then I'll get over it.
Yeah, I hear you, man. All right. Hey, this has been a ton of fun for us. I think I say it every time, like, this is the best one yet, but this was really one of my favorite interviews with you and with almost anybody. We covered a lot, and it was just kind of cool, and you were riding the bike the whole time, and I was chilling on a nice comfort.
Next time, I'm going to be at the chair, and you guys be on the bike, and we'll see how that one works out.
It's going to be one of those quick TMZ ones, man. 3 questions, 80 seconds. Hey, Cub, when you fighting again? And that'll be it for me.
Technically,
but anyway,
so you could just kind of go like this.
Food, but instead you can't breathe.
That's true, huh? Hey, Cub, would you fall for it if I was like this? All right, hold on. Let me get on the bike. Okay. What's going on, Cub? How you doing? Does it look like I'm riding a bike, guy?
You look like you're on elliptical.
Yeah, huh? I have to.
Well, you are sweating, so
I think I'm going. I'm not sweating. Come on, I know I'm fat, but that's just a nice glow that I got. I got a good tan because I've been getting my 10,000 steps in. I got a good tan. That ain't sweat. Look at that. I'm losing hair. I'll give you that.
We're going to talk about endurance. You guys got it because you guys have been in this game for a long time. That takes endurance. And I give you mad props for that. I appreciate your dedication to the sport. And it's cool. It's been really cool. I appreciate the fans. Like, I really do. But that's always meant the most to me is when my peers give me praise and when they talk to me and, whether it be my media friends or other fighters or other coaches, the people that are there every day and they notice you enough to say, man, you've been doing good or this and that. So, being able to run into you guys, over and over again and over the years, it means a lot.